One was String Builder, and I said more because I think I've mentioned String Builder a little bit in the past, and um, in this, I'm not sure if, how much I did, but regardless of that, we're going to talk about it uh, and apply String Builder to building a comma separated row from an array. That's kind of in preparation to writing a comma separated file. And then there's a little issue when, um, well, as we'll see, the last comma can be a little problematic. Then we're going to talk a little bit about, I say, more on regular expressions. We've actually been using regular expressions without completely knowing it, and the regular expressions, as I'll probably mention again, is a fairly deep topic. We're just going to kind of dip our toes into it. Nevertheless, it's a very important facility to have. It's an important thing to have in your toolkit, especially if you're doing things like manipulating strings, manipulating text. And then finally, another thing which we've been using without much comment is this thing called printf. Up until now, we've mostly been using this print line. And you probably noticed that there are a lot of different print lines. There's a print statement as well, but printf turns out to be the, in many situations, the most useful. So it has a little mini language all of its own. So that's what we're going to do. And you'll notice that there's not a whole lot of PowerPoint. This is the only slide. So that's because I want to give you more time with code rather than talking at you. So, and ultimately, if I haven't said this already, and even if I have, it bears repeating, the only way to learn to program is to program. And the more that you program, the more that you'll be comfortable with it. What I have endeavored to do is give you the concepts that will help navigating your way through through coding. And the thing about coding, it's a lot like writing, as you'll no doubt, hopefully, when you write your thesis, you will discover that writing is not so much about writing the words. Writing is more about editing. In other words, taking the words you've written and making them a little bit better. Likewise, coding, a lot of coding is debugging, having a program which either, well, at the first cut for a compiled program like Java, it is getting the darn thing to compile, which consists of getting the red squigglies to go away. And the thing is, you want them to go away for the right reason, not the wrong reason. That can be important. And then there are, the second level is consists of runtime errors. If you've been programming Java for any length of time, you have encountered at least a number of different null pointer exceptions. If you haven't encountered a null pointer exception, then you haven't been programming enough. So I think every one of you has encountered that at some point. And then finally, when your program runs without any, it compiles, so it runs without any errors, but it doesn't give you the output that you want. So that's the final level of debugging in terms of just getting it to work. And then after that, there's getting it to work in a more effective or efficient way. So there's getting it to work, and then there's getting it to work in a good way. Okay. Let's see here. No, I don't think I want that. Oh, okay. We'll deal with that. Where are we here? Okay. So oh. Okay, so we're going to talk about string builder, and then in the course of that, I'm gonna take a string and break it up. So in the last computer assignment, you were doing that with a tab separated file. And as far as I can tell, you all were able to successfully do that. So let's take this string, and then I want to break it up into an array, and then I want to take that array and um, I want to write it in a way that it's separated by commas. Okay, so, and the way I do that is with something called, well, let's first split it. So, and then we're going to come back to this. Okay, so here's a string. Notice I've declared it to be private static final, and in the tab separated file rows, you were splitting by a tab, which was one of these things. And in this, there aren't any tabs, but the words are separated by spaces. So let's see what that's about. And let's just print it out to see what we get. Oops. Okay, so we see that we see all of the different words on just on one line. So now the task is I want to write this as one long line, but separated by commas now instead of spaces. Now there's, when we get to regular expressions, there's kind of a fancy way of doing that.
Bernie,
But
can you pull down your output a little bit so we can see the rest of the code up top? Thanks.
it's just a string, yeah. Right, try to hold down here. Okay, so now the thing is that we have an array, and I want to take that array and um, just write a string where oh, let's say, well, okay, the not string builders, that's okay, string builder. Remember that strings in Java are immutable, and that means that you can manipulate them to produce new strings, but the object itself cannot be modified. String builder is kind of a, well, what it says, it's something that is like a string, only you can manipulate it, and there are some fairly interesting things that you can do with this. So the first thing is again, I want to, let's just let's just do the first 10 of these guys. Okay, so what the method is append. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm appending the first 10 words separate, and a word here is defined as something separated by a space. And let's see what we get. So if I just jam them together, what I get is this. Okay, and here let's we don't have to print this anymore. Oops. Okay, so that's a step. Now, again, what I want to do is if I wanted to at some point output this as a comma separated row, what I can do is one of the interesting things that append does. In fact, if we look at it, here, okay, when we append, it appends the specified character sequence to this appendo, but notice what it returns. It actually returns a string builder, and the string builder it returns is itself. So what that means is we can kind of chain these together. Okay, so remember, what are we trying to do here? What am I trying to do? I mean, you don't have a choice in the matter. I'm trying to take this array and what I'm trying to do is write a row of where they're separated by commas. Okay, so I append the word and then I append a comma to that. And now here we have a choice. We can append the string comma or we can append the character comma. The character comma is slightly more efficient because the character is like a constant, whereas a string, remember, a string is an object. So if I do this, then the virtual machine actually has to create a string object. Whereas if I do a character, if I just have one character, then it doesn't create an object. It just kind of points to a place where it's storing the character comma. Okay, so we see here that we have separated them by a comma. And I can use anything here. I mean, if there are some data sets that use a semicolon instead, we could do that. We could also, we could create a tab separated file if we did that. Sometimes they like to use this pipe thing. Okay, but probably one of the most common is the comma. And if you've installed Microsoft Excel and you double click on a CSV file, it will open it up in Excel with it'll open up the file in Excel. And then it'll say, oh, by the way, if you want more features, save this as a spreadsheet, stuff like that. Okay, so now here's the thing though, there's that extra comma at the end. And, that can be a little problematic because basically it's, we know it's not, it really shouldn't be there. So how can we get rid of it? Well, what we can do is, and this is where the string builder offers a little bit more stuff. It allows us to say delete a particular character. It actually allows us to delete a range of characters. So just to kind of, well, let's do it. It has, notice it's got a lot of stuff here. But it has delete char at. So it lets me delete one character at. Now, where is that character? Well, it's kind of at the end, but I don't really, I have to know exactly how many characters there are here. But fortunately, a string builder is smart enough to know that. And if I tell it the last index of, and because notice the signature here, the last index of requires a string. Notice that the method is overloaded because it says, okay, the last index of this from a given index, but here I just want the last index of this. So I can delete the character at the last index of this. And again, what I want to say is that some of the things that were being emphasized early on in the course about instance methods and instance variables and stuff like that are things that are used, or at least applied on a daily basis, or at least if you code on a daily basis, as I do. So understanding that delete char at is an instance method of string builder, and last index of is an instance method of string builder. If you understand that, and then you can navigate classes that you're using for the first time and understand what it is that is going on with them. Okay, so what we've done is we've removed that last, okay, no, see, it's gone. So here I said, what is the last index of this? And then delete it. I strung these together, but okay.
Professor Buss,
Yes.
would delete character at not take a negative value?
That's a great question. If it takes a negative value, it will either give you an error or it will do nothing. All right, well, let's try that. Okay, so this tells me a little bit about what it's doing. So under the hood, it's keeping an array of characters. And its string index out of bounds exception tells me, this is a fairly informative exception. Shortly, maybe as soon as next week, we'll start talking about exceptions because we've been dealing with them, but we need to go into them in a little depth. Okay, so what happens if you give it a negative index? Well, it says it's the index out of bounds exception, and it said the length was 52. So that's one thing to know. Knowing that the length is 52, what would happen if we try to delete the character at 52? That would also give us an array out of bounds exception as well. Okay, how did I know that? Well, I knew that because it was clearly the case that string builder is keeping a character array under the hood. And then when it said that the length was 52, knowing how zero-based arrays are, if I try to access something at the length of an array, it will always give me an error because that's one more than there is. So again, I get the same index out of bounds exception. So just to kind of go back to this now, I mean, now this is a little, this is what I had planned, but okay, no, and I'm probably being not that smart about it, but let's, supposing I wanted to do a number of lines that are kind of like this, and each line is going to have exactly 10 of these, okay? So, so here's what I can do, is that instead of this, I can okay. Okay, I'm going to do that, but then I'm going to say if I if it's if the modulo is 0, like every 10th one, what I'm going to do is basically do this thing right here. Then I want to append a new line. And then here's where we can use this the system property. So here's the thing about new lines. Every major operating system has a different way of representing new lines. Well, okay, rather than getting into that, I'll just give it a back. We've used a \n, and let's just sort of print it out here once we do that. Oops. No, that's. And then at the very end, well, let's just see what this does. Okay, so now it's acting a little strangely. And why is that? It's acting a little strangely because of these new lines that were in the string itself. So that leads to taking a look at regular expressions. Now, this split method that we've been using, the argument is actually we've been using it as a string, but it's actually something called a regular expression. And a regular expression is actually another language in itself. And kind of here's how it works. The book has a nice discussion of this. When I'm doing this, say split, and then I give it a space, it's saying to split on the space itself. One space. So this one space matches one space here. Now, one of the problems with that is that what if there were like two spaces? See, one space does not, it matches this and it matches this. So if I do this, if I have two spaces in a row, then that will, okay, we can't really see it here, but there's actually an extra space. We can see it right here. You see it right there? You see these two commas in a row? So what happened was, because there were two spaces here, it treated this thing in between as a thing, but the thing was an empty string. Okay, so you see that? You see the two commas in a row there? So what if I, so I want my split to take into account the fact that there's more than one space. I'm not sure if this will work, but okay, now in the language of regular expressions, a plus, what are you complaining about? A plus means one or more. And so now you see with the plus that double comma is now gone, because I'm splitting on one or more pluses. But I still have all this stuff here, and notice see, after bin there's a new line. After dream there's a new line. So this is actually doing exactly what I'm telling it to. Let's see. Let's just make sure we're okay. All right, but notice where the new lines are. So there's a new line here, and then that is what is making it go to the next place. And then also, what if there were tabs in here? Let's put a tab. So if I put a tab in and I run it, notice notice where it shows up. Here's the tab. Why? Because a tab is not a space, and a new line is not a space. Okay, so here's where the language of regular expressions can come in. What I want to do is I want to be able to match one or more of a space, a tab, or a new line. And the way I do that is with a square bracket. Oops. So if I have a space, a tab, or a new line, then this bracket says, give me, this will match one. Okay, if I just have one, this will match one of a space, a tab, or a new line. But again, see here I have a space and a tab. And maybe here's I have a space and a new line. So if I want one or more of those, I put a plus, and that says match one or more of a space, a tab, or a new line. And now when I run it, we see that everything is basically what I've done is I've taken the array of strings that I split this up into, and I'm writing this as a comma separated string now. And okay, what did window? Okay, well, we'll address that in a second. And then notice here, for the very last one, because it had fewer than 10, I need to kind of basically do this one last time. Just to get rid of that last guy. Okay, so you say, oh, now here's another double comma. Now, what the heck happened there? Was that another thing that happened before where I had two spaces in a row? And the answer is no, because there was this first comma is actually a comma, and I'm not splitting on the comma. Now there are a couple of things I could do. One is I can simply add a comma there as another thing to split on. Okay, so now that got rid of that, treated this comma again as just another separator. Okay, so that's kind of building things up from scratch.
Arnie, in that square bracket there, can you write individual letters or characters?
Absolutely, absolutely. If I want to, for example, if I want to also separate on T, then it will happily do that.
If you wanted to do TA though, would you have to put that in quotes, or how would that work?
Well, if I wanted the string TA, yeah, I would have to. Let's see, is TA gonna? I don't know, but I'm looking. I don't see a TA, but
Or BE or WA or whatever.
yeah. Yeah, if I just what I think the is okay. If I just give it a string, it'll split on just that string. Okay,
Can you use that in conjunction with the square brackets, or you have to do them separately?
No, you can do again. This is it's a language that's extremely expressive, and yes, you can definitely do all of that. So one way to do that is there's an OR bracket. So here's my space, my tab, my new line, and my comma. And I want one or more of those. Okay, so that's that split on either the word the or one or more of space, tabs, or new lines or commas. So again, this is it's a whole language, and we could easily spend the entire quarter just kind of delving into this. So we're, like I said, we're just going to kind of dip our toes a little bit. Now it turns out that there are, because of things like this. Okay, we'll kind of ignore the comma for a second. There are some shortcuts that have come up with. One is something called a space. Now here's the thing. Remember, I was sort of talking about what a backslash is. In regular expressions, a backslash is an escape character. But if you want to use a backslash in a string, I need to backslash it. In other words, okay, what S is it means space, and a space is a tab, a space, a tab, or a new line. That is any white space. And so instead of having that bracket thing, I just say backslash S and one or more of them, and I get the same thing as I was getting before. Now there's another shortcut, and that is a word. So a word is basically anything in between white spaces. So let me show you what that is. Okay, so if I split on the words, then all I'm going to get are the spaces. And so what this is a backslash W. It means word, and plus means one or more. Actually, in this case, there's, and what that did is that stripped out all the words and just left with the things that weren't words, like spaces, tabs, new lines, that comma, and the question mark. Now, the opposite of that is, capital W, which is anything which is not a word. So that will actually give me the original thing again, because spaces, tabs, and new lines are not a word. But notice what it also does. It also stripped out not only the comma in window, but it also stripped out the question mark. See, when I was just splitting on spaces like this, it left the comma in. But if I'm splitting on everything that's not a word, then it again, it took out all the other ones. In other words, what split does is it takes this regular expression, and anything in the string that matches that regular expression, it treats as a delimiter. And so what it will do is it will create this array of strings based upon using this as the delimiter, meaning everything that matches this does not count, and everything that is in between that is what gets returned. And that's how, again, so what have we done? We've taken this string, which had a bunch of different white space stuff in it. Again, spaces, tabs, new lines, multiple spaces, multiple, we could put, it doesn't matter how many of these tabs we put in or how many of the extra spaces, we're going to get the same thing because of the plus. Okay, so we've taken that, and then this is just a way to to take that, we've taken that array, we've turned it into a comma separated value thing. Okay, so now the final thing we can do, so let's a string builder. Okay, it's not a string builder, it's a string builder. So now, remember our friend refactor? I think I might have shown you this, but here I have, if you want to change the name of a class, then you can't just change it, but you can refactor it. So refactor rename, remember I left the R out. And so, because it needs to change the name of the file as well. So let's, okay, I want to, what's that? Okay, so I'm gonna, actually, okay, so we've done a bit on regular expressions here. But I want to talk a little bit about this printf, and on the in the resources handout, there's kind of a cheat sheet on what printf is about. The way that printf works is that instead of just kind of print line, which print line just will print one thing. So it'll print an object, in this case by invoking the toString, or it'll print a string, or it'll print a number, or any one of a number of things. But that's all it does. I can't put I can't sort of separate things by commas. I have to build a string in there if I want to do that. Now, supposing okay, so all right, here's one use. So let's okay, I'm deliberately doing something that is going to be a little screwy. We'll see what it is in just a second. So here's a number. It's a double. And if I want to do a printf, then here's one of the codes. To print a floating point number, I use it's a %f. And then, okay, we'll see what happens here. So now notice a couple things. Well, first of all, it printed 0, which I deliberately did. Second, notice it didn't give me a new line here. It kind of left this. Normally, this should be all the way at the bottom. So I need to explicitly put a new line, and the new line that they use in printf is actually %. So % is the escape character for printf. Why? That's just because that's the way they did it. Okay, so now that I've given it my new line, it goes to the next line. Now, this didn't do what I was asking, or it did what, again, these computers are stupid things. They do exactly what you tell them to and not what you want them to. So clearly what I wanted was something else. I wanted something like this. Okay, now how do I do that? And this is something that's important to remember. Now some of you were not totally on top of this. It's an important thing to be on top of if you're going to be doing numerical calculations in a strongly typed language. This is true of Java. This is true of every strongly typed language. Now, again, the thing to remember is that if there's at least one double in an expression, it will promote everything to a double. So I don't have to write 3.0. As long as I write 2.0, then I will get a bunch of stuff. Okay, so now that's how I can print it up. But what the usefulness of this is, what if I only wanted 3 decimal places? So here, this just kind of prints out whatever it is, and it could be a long one. Okay, so it's just kind of giving me. Now, supposing I want 3 decimal places, I put 0.3, and that says only print 3 decimal places. Okay, so now I only have 3 decimal places. Now, what if I wanted an integer as well? Well, I can, an integer, for an integer, it's D. Why D? I'll tell you, I have no idea. D for, see, you would think D would be for double. F is for floating point. D is actually, I think they call it decimal, but that's misleading because there's no decimal place. So, okay, so here we have, we're using it to print that. Okay, so that's how we can format numbers, and that can be very useful because a lot of times, if I have too many, well, if I want more, I can actually get more. Notice. And if I want fewer, then I can get fewer. So F for floating point, percent, and then if I put dot and the number of decimal places, then that will do that. Percent D for an integer. And okay, so now let's kind of come back to this. There's another thing I can do with a string, and that's the word matches. So okay, what did we say? We said there was the. Okay, so just a string can be thought of as a regular expression, and as we saw before, it can, anything which matches the will match this. Okay, so let's go down our list of strings, and let's do a printf, and because I print a string gets printed by %s for string. And then here's another string, like I say, does it match the regular expression? And a Boolean is %b, and so %n is the new line. So here's our s, here's our regular expression, and here's s matches this regular expression. So this will print every word and say whether it matches it. Okay, so no, 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 no. Okay, there's one that does. No, 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 there's another one. There's another one, etc. Okay, so kind of showing two things here. One is, this is how printf will print a string. That also works for objects. %b is how it prints a Boolean. And okay, I'm looking for. Okay, so now what about something that matches either the or something that begins with a W. Okay, now in regular expressions, this upper caret says something that begins. Was there a W? Oops, no. Okay, that was just a, well, no, that was one too far. Okay, so that's trying to match a word, but what you can do though is there is a way of what did I want to, oh, aha. I wanted to look at a number. Okay, so let's look at a I'm sorry, I want strings. Oops. Let's just do integers because that'll be easier. So I only have a couple minutes. All right, so let's get a new regular expression. And now the thing is that for numbers, there's again a magic letter D, lowercase d, and that stands for one digit that's a number. D for digit, I guess. Okay, so okay, here's the string, matches this string, Boolean, new line. Okay, so S, regular expression, S matches the regular expression. Okay, matches. Okay. Okay, so notice that this number matched one or more digits, but this one didn't, and this one didn't. But you think, well, they really should. I want them to. So that brings us to the question of there are optional things that match. And the optional things, I can do it like this with my bracket. Either minus, now I need to escape that, or a plus. I need to escape that as well. And if I say, well, now if I just put them there, then what happens is now these match, but this one doesn't. And so what I want to say is if there's a minus or a plus, I want it to match. And if there isn't, I want it to match too. So I put a question mark, and that says, if it's not there, it's okay. And so now all of these are matched here. And the reason this is useful is because if I'm reading in text and want to need to turn it into numbers, kind of the way that you were doing with the movies, where you were reading in a year and turning it into an integer, and reading in the number of running minutes and turning that into an integer. Okay, that was easy because it was an integer. But if we're reading in data, the data we read in may come in like this, or if we can read it, if we may get a negative number, then we need to be able to handle that. And this is a way to handle that. If we use something like this, then this will handle integers with or without a plus or a minus in front of them. Okay, so that's it for today. And you may have noticed that there's no assignment this week. So there is no assignment this week. There will be on Friday, but other than that, I'm giving you kind of the week off. Well, not completely off, but hopefully you've we'll go over what we talk about here and have any questions for me. But if there are no questions now, we will adjourn for today.
Thank you.